the real work in any business is thinking. And it's not that takes a little or a lot of time. It just is the hardest work. And most people don't think. They don't sit down and think.
Hear his story, I think, is so important. It's tobacco. It's called Pirate's Den.
Justin, welcome. Today we have Justin Ray. He is the co-founder of the brand Rome. He is 28 years old and runs a 7-figure business. He is a self-made entrepreneur. Going to be talking to us today about building a brand.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Dude, it's an honor for you to
pumped.
be here. But we want to jump this off. We want to jump in a real personal and friendly note. Now, Cody has pulled up a video for you, and we have one question. What is going on while this is happening? We got this right from your Instagram. So what is happening?
Oh, man.
Almost accidentally ordered mouse. That'll do it. That'll work instead.
You want me to explain it right now?
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
We're in China during this, visiting with some of our manufacturers, and they have some interesting food over there. Very interesting.
That is.
Did I hear mouse?
Yeah,
Is that what I heard?
mouse is what I
Mouse, pigeon heads, chicken feet. Yeah,
Oh,
weird
wow.
stuff.
What about bat? Do they have any bat?
No.
Oh, I'm sorry. Too soon? Should I have not said that?
Did anyone order the mouse? Or the pigeon?
We made the mistake of telling them to order. We said, you guys should just order what you think is best because the menu's in Chinese.
Yeah.
So they did. They ordered what their favorite dishes are.
Wow.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Did you actually try the mouse at all?
I think I did.
What
yeah.
did it taste like? Did it taste like
I
chicken?
don't. Yeah, just like really weird chicken. Yeah, it's pretty gross.
Interesting.
That's so
Interesting.
impressive.
Yeah.
Right, well, we're going to kind of get started. First of all, really excited to have you here, man. One of the questions that I personally wanted to kind of just start us off with is like, how did you get started in business? I mean, what really inspired you to get involved? And then can you just kind of share a little bit about how that background came about for you?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I think I never really thought about it as business, you know? I tell people this a lot. I just saw it as a way to make my own schedule, really. So ever since a young age, it was just so fascinating to be able to provide something for somebody and have them pay you for it, as opposed to, you know, going the traditional route and getting a job. I just saw it as so fascinating. Not really that I wanted to be in business, you know? And I've told Gabe this before. I've told both of you this before, I think, but my sister sold a pair of jeans on eBay when I was like 9 years old. And it was just mind-blowing to me that she did that through the internet to someone she didn't ever meet. Complete stranger.
That whole concept just like fascinated you that you could actually do that.
Yeah, it was fascinating.
Very effortless almost.
Yeah,
to some degree.
exactly.
Yeah, that's so cool.
So that just started me down the road of looking at different ways to make money.
Now, how old were you when that
And
happened?
then you and I started a skateboard company
Yes.
around 10. And I actually was looking through my parents' attic the other day, and I found one of the blank decks
Are you
that we
kidding
never
me?
sold. Yeah.
So for those of
still
you who
have it.
actually don't know, Justin is one of my cousins, one of my dearest friends. Him and I used to skate a lot when we were kids. And yeah, we started a skateboarding business together.
Yeah.
Super cool to actually be a part of your journey. Dude, so that's crazy. So you were probably like less than 13 years old when you first got really interested in business.
Yeah, and I didn't think of it as being interested in business. I don't know. I just saw it as being able to live a life that I wanted to live.
Not a lot of people kind of make that mental jump.
Yeah.
And yet you did that at such a young age.
And I also liked money, so I
Yes.
wanted to.
Who doesn't?
Yeah, exactly. I wanted to make a couple extra bucks on the side.
On that note, this is actually a great segue. So for you personally, how do you define the difference between a business and a brand?
Interesting. I mean, I think it's all sort of branding in a sense. I never really thought about that, I guess. I mean, a business is just something that provides a service or a product for customers to buy. And then a brand is really kind of how you psychologically stay with your customers, right? Because we buy brands, we don't really buy products. So you can sell products, but if people don't remember who you are, they're not going to buy from you again. So that's really the power of branding.
So you have a brand name, Rome.
Yep.
Can you kind of share a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I have a brand name Rome, and we started it about 5 years ago, and we sell mostly bicycle and motorcycle accessories, and we've just branched out into some other adventure lifestyle products, backpacks, gear-related items, things like that.
Are you planning on expanding this as big as you possibly can get, or?
I don't know. I think we're trying to expand it as much as it'll grow.
Yeah.
And we have growth plans for it, certain revenue goals we want to hit, things like that. But I think that we're not trying to make it the larger than life brand. You know? We're not trying to become the next Nike or something like that.
And I have to say, I mean, Gabe and I, we use multiple of your products. Even before.
Quite often.
Yeah, quite often.
I hope so.
We have all the backpacks that we pack all of this gear with. Highly recommend the backpack, actually. It's super good, really
So
light.
convenient.
Yeah, and the other thing, too, is the bike mount is freaking awesome. And if you guys like motorcycles, this is the absolute perfect one for a motorcycle.
Little advertising plug here.
Oh, it's
100%.
but it's me being honest. It's not any.
real.
By the way, Justin didn't put us up to this. This is legit, like what it is. Like it's just the best kind of product out there for bicycling and motorcycling. So I highly recommend you guys check that out. And we'll leave a link in the description, actually,
Absolutely.
for Rome products.
So, Justin, you had mentioned about the difference between a business and a brand has to do a lot with psychologically following the customer. So, for you personally, what do you see as some of the main components to making that journey? Is it some of the visuals? Is it copywriting? What are some of the main components to follow that journey?
Yeah, I mean, really, I think branding's pretty simple. If you treat the customer right, and you give them a good experience, and then you get them to remember your name, they're going to want to buy from you again. I mean, you can get into the specifics of, obviously, you want to portray the logo in a certain way that is appealing to your target of people. But I think it's really no more complex than just getting them to like the aesthetics and look of your brand, and then treating them well, and then keeping them reminded about you, you know? It's pretty simple.
Yeah.
Simple as that. But they need continually reminded.
As far as brands go, like what are some of your personal favorite brands, and did any of those like maybe kind of inspire you for what you're doing now?
No, not really. They're not specifically for the brand that we have, but you mean just personal brands that I like?
Yeah, just
in
personal
everyday-
brands that you
everyday
like,
life?
and yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd say the brands that I like the most are the ones that I identify with the most.
Yeah. That's
The ones that I think say the most about me. So like Vans shoes, for example.
I had it in my head when you said
Yeah.
that. Yeah. I was like, dude, I'm totally going for Vans first.
Yeah, certain boots companies, certain clothing companies that don't even have logos on the clothing, but I feel like their clothing is how I want to represent myself, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, brands like that.
What's one of the hardest things you've experienced while building your own business?
Oh man, there's been a lot of issues. We've had inventory seized at the border because we found out our manufacturers were bundling them with other containers of hazardous products. So then our products that weren't hazardous got seized along with the other products.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
We've had, mishaps where we've had to relabel 25,000 units and had to have them sent to the house. And just things like that. Intellectual property disagreements, all sorts of stuff that was just not fun, stuff that you have to face as a business owner. But you know what the funny thing is? You start to get stronger through it, and then the things that seem really, really bad, after you get through them, you realize they weren't as bad as you thought. So you kind of start to develop that mindset for the next thing.
And it kind of becomes easier the next time around.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
yeah.
interesting. Is it like, does it keep you up at night at all?
Yeah. So when you're initially going through some of this stuff, yeah, absolutely. Some of
Yeah.
it can be very stressful because the only thing you can think of is, what if I lose my business? You know.
Yeah.
But then as you go on, you start to realize more and more that most of the time you're going to make it through. It's very rare to encounter something that's just going to completely sink the ship. You know.
Yeah, Yeah, there's this whole idea that the longer something's been about, the longer it will continue to be about. So something that's been around for 10 years is likely to be around for another 10 years, more likely than something that's only been around for a single year.
Right, that's true. And then the other thing is you realize that things that you thought were huge issues maybe aren't as big as you made them out in your mind to be. You know, because you go from not having to be the one in charge of the problems to being the one in charge of the problems when you as a job compared to a business. And then you're like, oh, or the bigger picture problems, you know.
Yeah.
And then it's like, wow, I've never faced this before. This is really scary, you know? So it's kind of the natural progression of the entrepreneur, which you guys both know. You guys have had some businesses, so.
Oh yeah, definitely had our fair share, I think.
That's for sure.
Of craziness. Not thousands of products mailed to my house, but did you have to like mail all those personally after that, or?
Yeah. We had them delivered on tractor trailer trucks to my house at the time. It was this big
The drivers
house.
must have loved you guys.
Oh yeah, it was funny. Pallets of inventory. I mean,
my
25,000 units.
Holy
and then
crap.
we hired college students. We called around. We tried to find a place that would relabel these boxes for us, but we couldn't find anywhere.
Dude.
So we said, okay, we're gonna do it ourselves. And this was like first year in business, and we just hired a bunch of college students, and we had a whole assembly line going through the house, out the living room, out the kitchen, all the way into the backyard, and then people would repackage them. It was really funny, but
Dude,
it worked. It worked.
If it works, it works.
That is what
Yeah,
I call
exactly.
a legitimate hustle.
Yeah, that was a hustle.
That's hilarious.
Oh, that was so funny.
Do you like ever get involved in personal development, or do you read books, or do you have like certain routines during the day? Or
Oh,
something?
you know this about me, Chief?
I do, yes. But are you? But our audience doesn't know, so
Yeah,
we
no.
need people to know.
I'm a big believer in books. I did 2 years of a Bible school. It was great, but it wasn't really traditional college. The credits did roll over, but after that, I just said, you know what? I want to start my own business, so I'm just going to do that. So I tried a bunch of businesses. Not all of them worked out in a big way. Some of them worked out in small ways, some more than others, but some of them failed. And then I just started reading a lot of books, and I really got turned on to the idea of personal development, I think, after college. And I just saw it as a way to educate myself on the things that I actually wanted to learn, you know? So that's what I did. And that's when things really started to change. And then it wasn't much later that I could see I would try this project and then this project, and then it progressed to eventually starting a business that kind of fulfilled what I needed, you know? So,
Do
yeah.
you still to this day, I mean, even as a successful business owner, do you still to this day maintain that personal development?
Oh, yeah.
Or has it changed
Definitely.
for
No, if anything, it's just gotten more. I know for some business owners, they actually don't like to read as much, some more than others, but it works really well for me personally. So
Yeah.
I read a lot of books, at least 1 or 2 a month, and then attend conferences, seminars, you know,
you? Yeah.
of conferences that have to do with my industry.
No, I think it's so important because it's amazing how negative our brains are. I've come to realize it's just we need something to kind of feed that in the right direction.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So you, at the beginning of this personal development talk, you had mentioned that you started a bunch of things. Some worked, some didn't. So my question is, how do you decide when to quit?
You know,
When is it wise
that's
to
a
quit?
really good question, actually, because I think it's in my nature to not quit. And I think it's about framing it in the right way. Because a lot of people, like if you're in like a passion-based business and you love it and you know it's absolutely what you want to do, like without a doubt, or like let's say you're a professional athlete or want to be a professional athlete, then you shouldn't give up on that. But when it comes to certain business ventures and you're trying to reach, let's say, a certain financial goal or a certain goal with the business, and you don't care as much about what business it is, but about achieving an outcome as a business person, I think you need to assess. Oh man, that is a tough question. I think you need to assess the cost and what's going on, and whether or not it's worth it to continue in the business venture. Because like I launched other physical products brands when I launched Rome, and some of them were just plagued with problems. And eventually it was like Rome was succeeding, but these other ones weren't. So I just cut them, you know, but I didn't see it as quitting. I saw it as focusing my energy on what was working. Or in the past, I had tried other business ventures and they weren't quite getting me the results I wanted after putting in a lot of effort. And I didn't care a whole lot about the business that it was. So, and it wasn't that they even failed or that I quit. It was just like, okay, this isn't really working. I've really tried everything. I was always trying multiple things, I guess, you know?
Yeah, do you think that passion part seems to be apply that and then trying multiple things?
I think trying multiple things. And then also, like I was rehabbing my first home, a single family home. So I was building a lot of equity in it. I hated that, but it worked in a small sense, right? Because I had a lot of equity. Then I was trying another business right after I finished that. And then as I was trying that other business, I actually started Rome. And then Rome I just loved, and it was working. So then at that point, it was like, okay, I'm not passionate about real estate, so I'm not going to do that. But it worked okay for what it was. It was a small opportunity. Then I was trying the other business, and that wasn't really getting me the results I wanted, but I had this other business over here that I loved. So I was like, well, if I'm not that passionate about this other business, why keep doing it, you know?
Right.
So I guess when I was starting stuff, I was never really putting all my eggs in one basket. I was kind of just trying a bunch of stuff, seeing what I liked, you know, seeing what was going to take off. But I think now, as a more mature businessman and just understanding how these things go, I can it depends on the industry, but I mean, you just have to ask yourself, at what point is the pain not worth it? You know, I think that's really the question. And then you don't see it as quitting.
Wow, that's such a good way to say that.
Yeah, at what point is the pain too much, right? Like, let's say you start a new business in a different industry, and after a year, you're still bleeding money, and you're still raising money to fund it, and it's just not making it.
And so many people do that, though.
Yeah, is it worth it to keep going? Because sometimes the answer might be yes, but if not, then you just cut it as quickly as possible.
It must be so hard to like separate emotion from wisdom to some degree, you know?
Yeah, and I think if you're going to fail, you should fail fast.
Interesting. Why do you say that?
Well, there's nothing wrong with failure, and I know this is talked about a lot in the personal development world, but because failure is just learning. It's all about perspective and reframing. So as soon as you can gain that other perspective of saying, you know what, this isn't a failure. I learned from this. I learned a lot from this, but this just isn't working.
Yeah,
it's not worth my time and energy.
Yeah, no, that's so good. That's so good. Failure is the part of the recipe for success.
Right, and it's so based off what the circumstance, the situation. So it's hard to give one answer to all situations like that. But yeah, if you just have to ask yourself, at what point is the pain not worth it? I think. Yeah. You know, and it might not be an emotional pain. It might just be a pain of financial. You know, like
don't kill yourself in debt.
Yeah. If you don't really truly believe in it.
Yeah.
Because there's also plenty of people that have and then they've succeeded. But it's a fine line, and you just have to know what it's worth to you. Yeah. And then if you do move on to something else, don't take that thing so to heart as a failure. View it as an opportunity that was a learning experience.
So, okay, obviously one of the greatest important things to have a successful business is to have a customer, right? But the question is like the old saying that everyone says, is it true? Is the customer always right?
Well, the answer is no, but you have to make the customer feel like they're always right, I think. In my business, it's a little bit easier because our products are, you know, between the price point of anywhere from $10 to $100. So to make the customer happy, to give them the experience to want to buy from you again, you have to make them feel like they're always right. There is a line where if a customer is abusing systems or policies or things like that, you do have to draw a line. But in the products world, the customer is always right.
Like, obviously, you know, the customer is not always right, but you want to be able to make it so that they feel like as if, you know, they're being heard, it sounds like. That you're at least hearing them.
Yeah, they want to feel heard, and they want to feel like you've addressed their issues in at least a satisfactory way.
Have you ever had customers do crazy, stupid things? Like, say if they're, you know, like if one of the bike mounts somehow they didn't tighten it on their motorcycle well enough or something like that.
Oh yeah. I had a friend who actually
gotta buy me a new motorcycle.
I had a friend who said, "Hey, my phone fell off the bike mount when I was out riding," and I was like, "Well, did you I asked them if they had used all the stuff they were supposed to, and they're
Yeah.
like, no. And I was like,
Well, there you go.
yeah. So
Like,
yeah,
what do you
know,
say in a situation
I mean,
like
that was my friend, so I gave him a hard time for
Oh,
it.
okay,
I was
yeah,
like,
yeah,
that
yeah.
was user error. But
Yeah.
if it
Yeah.
if it was a customer, we would give them a refund or something. We would just say, yeah, sure. Here's a refund. We're sorry it didn't work out for you.
Yeah. No, that's amazing.
And sometimes customers will do that on purpose just to get something for free. But,
And I have to say,
just a
Rome
cost of
has
business.
Rome has literally the best customer service ever. Like, it's unbelievable. Super, super good.
thank you.
So,
Still working on, aspects of it, because it is hard at scale. You encounter different issues that you didn't anticipate,
It's so true.
So,
Yeah.
your customer service infrastructure might work for selling 100 units a day, but what happens when you start selling 1,000 units a day? Now you have different problems you encounter.
yeah.
Or it's, just as a small example, something
Well, it's
like
crazy because you have thousands of
that.
customers.
So, yeah, so I try to give a business grace too,
Yeah, yeah.
because I get it, especially the startup companies. I get it, you're growing, you're expanding, everything's not in place yet.
So I want to take this and go in a completely different direction.
right.
Yeah, but I think you'd have a really interesting answer for this. Is capitalism ever bad?
Interesting question. I think that irresponsible capitalism can be bad. I do think there is a responsible form of capitalism. I think that once you get to a certain point, you can have too much power as a company. Talking about big, huge, multi-billion-dollar brands. I really think that there can be some issues within that, but I don't think the problem is necessarily capitalism as a core idea. I think the problem becomes there just needs to be different guidelines in place, different moral compasses in place.
Okay.
Because that can go. I mean, that we're talking about a whole nother level here. But capitalism at its root, no, at its core of what it's supposed to be, as what it was designed to be.
Yeah, no, and that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I think the problem is that a lot of capitalists. I like what you said about the moral compass piece of it, because when you have a lot of money, you obviously have a lot of power or opportunity for power.
Well, here's an interesting thought. Forbes magazine, obviously a very capitalist magazine. They did a study and they interviewed X amount of people. I forget how many it was, and they asked them if they disagreed or agreed with capitalism, and more than 50%, it was something like 50% agreed with capitalism, 50% didn't. That was Americans, all Americans. And then they also asked, they did another survey asking people if they agreed with entrepreneurship or disagreed. And 90% of people agreed with entrepreneurship, and then 10% didn't, for whatever reason. I don't know why.
That's so.
But it was so contradictory, because entrepreneurship is capitalism.
It is
It's the freedom to
Right.
start your own business and make your own income, really.
Is luck a factor in success?
Yes, absolutely.
How much and why?
A lot.
That seems to frustrate a lot of people because they
It
feel
does.
like it's out of their control.
And you know what's funny? Jeff Bezos actually had an interview in the 90s, right after like 5-6 years after he started Amazon. And he is literally quoted as saying luck is a huge factor in business. The planets really have to align in a certain way for things to actually work out. So
is there a way to help luck to be on your side?
and this is why I say, like, you got to just be trying a bunch of stuff. Like, if you're an entrepreneur, or if you want to be an entrepreneur, you got to just try different stuff, on your nights and weekends, on your time. You use that time to try other stuff. I'm not saying don't relax and have fun with friends, but that's where you are trying different stuff, because it's not all going to work in a big way. Some of it might work in a very small way, but it takes luck, because what you're trying to do is predict that you're going to be able to ride a certain market wave, because every successful business has ridden some sort of wave. And sometimes those businesses are way ahead of the wave of the future, and they don't even realize it, but they keep persevering because it's what they love. So a good example of that is Nike shoes, right? If anyone's read Shoe Dog, the memoir by Phil Knight, the founder of Nike, he struggled for years. And he had a little bit of success, but it wasn't anything that could really support him. He lived with his parents for a while, but eventually they caught that wave, whether they realized it or not, or they created that wave, one or the other. I would have to reread the book. But so with Rome, for example, we caught it at a time when there was Amazon was really, really on the rise. It was established, but it was on the rise for physical products, and we kind of caught a wave there, whether we realized it or not.
Yeah.
So that was kind of lucky. But what happens as you get more mature is you try to predict those trends or predict what's coming, whether you know it or not, and then if it works out, then you got lucky. You know. So I guess what I'm saying is, sometimes you think, okay, this is going to work. I'm going to try it. I see a lot of opportunity here, and you try it and it doesn't work.
Right.
And then there's other times where you're like, okay, I'm going to try this, and it works. So it's not all luck. I think what it is you become the type of person that executes on something and follows through, and then eventually you actually start to learn what is a good opportunity and what isn't.
That is a beautiful way to put that.
Yeah,
Thanks.
It's
I
more
feel
about the
like
person
that's
you
vague.
become.
No,
more
it's
about
not
the person,
vague.
Yeah, more about the person you become and
Well-
less about the through the experience and less about
Yeah.
the different the specific opportunities that you're doing.
And I guess here's what I'm trying to say. Even if you come across a good opportunity, a great opportunity, let's say you're lined up and positioned perfectly, but you don't know how to execute as an individual, then that opportunity will pass you by. So is it getting lucky? No, it's not getting lucky. But where the luck comes in is that you caught the right opportunity at the right time. But where it's not lucky, where luck is not a factor, is that you execute. And that only comes through cultivating that within yourself.
That's so good.
So really all you're doing is preparing yourself when the opportunity arises. And sometimes things are just a dud. But when that right opportunity comes along, you know that you will execute on it and follow through.
Yeah, that's so good. I mean, it's funny too, because it's like, I feel like a lot of people don't take the opportunity. Mm-hmm. And there's hundreds. I was talking about this with Danielle, my wife, the other night. Opportunities are every single day.
Yeah.
You have opportunities that arise, and no one takes them. They just don't do anything.
Richard Branson, that's like one of his most famous quotes. Opportunities are like buses. They come and go.
It's crazy.
I mean, right? It's like to think like, oh man, if I missed the opportunity of Rome, there wouldn't be another one for a long time. People have been building successful businesses or lifestyles that they want, fill in the blank, for the last thousands of years.
Yeah,
So
seriously. Oh my word.
there's always going to be another opportunity.
So, all right, let me change gears a little bit here. I want to go back to trust a little bit. And I think this is a really important question that needs to be asked. I think, actually, Justin, you're the perfect person to be asking this question. And I know this because our families, we've had a lot of business interaction with our own family. We grew up in a family business.
Yeah.
That's like a special piece that we've had in our lives. And I guess my question is this: how important are boundaries with the people in your organization that are family? And not just that question, but maybe even vice versa. How important are boundaries? I guess is the real question here.
Yeah, I think really important. And maybe even another word to use in that is clarity.
Interesting. What do we mean by that?
Well, I think where a lot of family businesses fail is they don't have clarity of role. Because I know a lot of people who are very successful with running things with their family, a lot of my family included. But when they don't have clarity, that's when the trouble comes in.
Yeah.
And clarity is something that is just an ongoing task. But defining clearly what's your role, what are you supposed to do, and having clarity within that.
Yeah.
And then that becomes a boundary in and of itself.
Yeah, because I can imagine probably one of the hardest things in the world to do would be to be put into a position where you have to fire one of your family members. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Right. And sometimes you're going to encounter issues like that. I have a friend who, I've known people who have encountered issues like that, and it is difficult. It is hard. It's hard not to take something like that personally.
Yeah.
But when you have the clarity there of what you're supposed to do, you can keep coming back to it, and then that becomes the defining aspect of, or that becomes the definition of like, are you doing this or are you not? And rather than somebody saying, hey, I don't feel like you're doing what you're supposed to.
Yeah, that's good.
Because then you can say you are or you aren't. And that brings so much more clarity to a situation. And then it gives people the opportunity to actually fix that.
Yeah, it doesn't have to go as drastic as being fired or something like that.
Yeah, so the boundaries really come in with just having clarity of role. And again, that's an ongoing task. I don't think you can just put it on a piece of paper and that's it.
Yeah. Well, it's so hard because I feel like people like family and stuff. It's just like, oh, I don't want to like excommunicate our family from our business. You know, it's just
right.
It's so difficult to make that decision.
And the clarity comes in with thinking, and thinking is above all the hardest task that anyone can do. That's the real work in any business is thinking. And it's not that takes a little or a lot of time. It just is the hardest work. And most people don't think. They don't sit down and think.
I'm loving it, dude.
I'm loving it.
Yeah.
Dude, so appreciate you coming out here, man.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate you guys having me.
For real, honestly.
We're not done yet.
No, we're not yet. We have a couple more, but like, I'm just really enjoying this.
I could do this all day.
For real. So as an entrepreneur, there's a lot of things that try and take up your time. And specifically, there's a lot of people that will try and take up your time. Different opportunities, different ideas, or just in general.
Little tasks you shouldn't be doing. Yep.
So how do you kind of decide who and what to spend your time on?
Well, that's an interesting question because you have to define what's going to grow the business and what's going to actually continue, what's going to be the work that you have to do to, like if you're in charge of a business, you have to decide what's going to be the work that's going to help me grow this so that we can continue to profit and continue to make ends meet. But if you're not in a position where you have the people in place to manage the day-to-day tasks, then you can't drop the ball on those day-to-day tasks. You still need to do that. So that's where I think the hardest part of being an entrepreneur is knowing how to manage your time effectively. And that was the biggest struggle for me when I actually was full-time in my business. Some days, weeks, I would just waste. Not because I was trying to, but I thought I was doing the right things, but I wasn't. You know, and then you realize, okay, I need to be efficient with these daily tasks and then take the time to actually think about the things that are growing and expanding the business.
What were some of the transitions that helped you? What are some of the things you did that helped you make that transition?
Starting to track time, but even more than that, if you really wanted to simplify it, just choosing to actually focus on the things that were most important, the things that were growing your business, and not focusing on the little things. Like, the packaging's not perfect. I want it to be perfect. I struggled with that a lot. Or the product's not perfect. I want it to be absolutely perfect. So I'd spend a lot of time focusing on these little things that, because we were already selling, they didn't matter because people still wanted our product. But I was being a perfectionist, trying to make it absolutely 100% perfect. I should have been focusing on growth, and then those things would fall into place later on. They would not solve themselves, but you would figure out easier ways to solve them as long as you were continually having growth.
So like micromanaging, not exactly the best thing to do.
Well, yeah, micromanaging little things that didn't need managed, or focusing on cleaning up my email inbox instead of focusing only on the high priority emails. That's it. You know, letting it be messy for a short time and only focusing on the bigger things that needed to be fixed.
Yeah.
You know?
No, that's genius. With that all being said, though, obviously being a successful entrepreneur, you probably got a lot of people that want to spend time with you. I mean, obviously we asked you to be here in a part of this interview. I guess my question would be is like, in addition to all this, is like, how do you actually measure out what's important as far as like who sucks up your time? Because I feel like one of the greatest things that people can do to take energy away from you is just simply just suck up your time. Just like,
yeah.
So how do you determine, okay, this is a good person to invest time into, this is a good person to invest time into?
You just have to decide what you need personally for energy, because obviously your time is your energy. So decide what you need first. Make sure that you're filling yourself up with energy and fuel, and then deciding whether or not certain things align with what your goals are.
Yeah. That's hard to do.
So yeah, clarity for yourself. Yeah, it's very hard to do.
That's so hard to do. I've like when I was in the church, I
Yeah.
remember so many times being pulled.
Yeah, and actually, I'm sorry, keep going with that.
No. I was just gonna say, like, I remember so many times being pulled away, you know, like from my family, just being like, hey, can you, I'm not trying to paint a bad picture of the church. It's great. It's just so easy when there's so much opportunity. Just people are just like, hey, can you help me with this? Hey, can you help me with that? Hey, can you help me with this? Hey, can you help me with that? And at the end of it, it's just like, you can't even manage your own business, right?
Right. Yeah, you're just so fried.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Did you
Yeah.
ever feel that way? Just
Oh, totally burnt out. Yeah. I mean, what about you? Have you ever felt burnt out from this whole thing?
Oh yeah, absolutely. But I was gonna say one of the things that really helped me with that was starting to leverage keeping a schedule, but productivity planners, and that's really on the rise right now. Where you can buy a journal that helps you. It's not a day planner. Those are hard for me to use. Those work really well for some people, but it's more focused on your daily tasks and what's most important. But more recently, Gabe actually showed me the productivity planner.
And I actually got it from Cody, so all three of us
you
using
got
the
it?
same one.
Oh,
Yeah,
no
yeah,
kidding.
yeah.
I love it.
Isn't
Wait,
it
which, are we
amazing?
talking about?
I'm just going to do a plug here, but it's for Brendan Bouchard.
Oh,
It's-
dude, yes. I've been
it's
using it
called,
for years now.
It's called the High Performance Planner.
Yes.
Yeah,
Absolutely
I
amazing.
love it. Yeah, it's great
This
because
is-
it's your journal. It's your daily journal to get in the mindset you want, and then it also helps you plan out your daily tasks and your weekly tasks, and that's helped me a lot.
Dude.
I know some people don't need stuff like that, but I need it.
Makes such a difference.
I have to
Yeah.
buy the multicolor one where you get all of them all at once. Have you done that yet?
No,
Literally,
Well,
you
he has one that's multicolored.
Oh no, dude, no. Like,
Oh,
so you know how
multiple
it's only like
individuals.
it does like 2 or 3 months at a time.
Interesting.
You actually get, if you buy the multicolor package
By
you-
Brendan Bouchard.
Oh yeah, dude. You get literally the entire year of planning, and it's a multicolor one. So it's actually really
Interesting.
inspirational. So when you finish that first one, you go to that next one, which is a different color, and it's just really inspiring.
I'm gonna have to check that out.
Oh, dude, it's the best.
Wow.
It's
the
also
best.
cheaper too. I think it's like $60 instead of like 20 or 30.
Oh,
a
you're
piece.
saving so much money.
So yeah, you end up saving about half the price.
Yeah, I love it, dude. It's great.
All right, Justin. So this is a question I always like to ask every person that we interview at the end of each interview, and that's and I don't mean to sound morbid here. I just want to know, like, you're on your deathbed, you know, and you have a final piece of advice that you'd like to give everybody. What is that advice?
I would just say make sure that you're building your life around the lifestyle that you want to live, not around what you think is going to make other people view you a certain way. You know, are you living the lifestyle? Are you cultivating your lifestyle in the way that you want to live it? That's what I would say, because that's how I started my business, and that's what ultimately made me really, really happy. You know, even in spite of all the struggles and the stress of business, it might not be business for someone else.
Yeah.
It might not be making money for someone else, you know?
Yeah. That's so good.
That's amazing. So I kind of want to piggyback on that and ask you personally, for you specifically, what's next? So you've built this 7-figure business. I know you have plans to sell it in the next couple of years. So what's next? What's next on the horizon for Justin Ray?
I would say I really am passionate about building businesses, and I've discovered that through this. And I would like to build another brand with really a lot more potential to scale, because I think business is fun, but I think business is even more fun at scale. So continue to build Rome, and you know, hopefully we have plans to sell Rome in a few years, but just to continue to build great businesses, businesses that are structured well, that function well, and then the next business to have even more scalability. And you know, who knows? Something might change where I decide Rome is that. But right now, the plan is to just continue to build Rome and then also start something else.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So good.
Maybe in a year from now, maybe 2 years. I don't know.
I would love to have you come back on the show sometime in the next couple of years or sooner, and kind of see how things are going and the perspectives, if anything's changed.
Yeah, that would
at
be
all.
cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, guys.
Dude, really appreciate having you here.
Thank you so much, man.
been
It
fun.
has been an absolute blast.
Cool. Thanks, guys.